Right.
Got it.
There you go.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our genre event for tonight. My name is Sarah Armstrong. I'm the chair of the Storytelling Association of California, and we are delighted that you are here with us tonight. We have several wonderful storytellers, and the stories are going to be all around myths and fables, and we'll hear from several different people and their different takes on that topic. We're going to get started with a short video of a young woman, Tricia Shetty, who's 14 years old. Now, the Storytelling Association of California honors a storyteller in our community, Northern California, Southern California, the years alternate, who is not only a storyteller, but a mentor, works with storytelling, does wonderful things over time. And this year, Joy Swift from the South Bay was our honored teller. Well, Tricia has some things to say about Joy as a mentor and about storytelling itself, and then she'll share the story of Arachne with us. So Andy, if you would start the video, thank you.
All right, everybody, please bear with me for just a moment. I believe this is it.
Hello everyone, my name is Tricia Shetty. I'm 14 years old and I am part of the South Bay Storytelling Group. So I first officially started telling stories when I was about 7 years old. But before that, like ever since I was a baby, I used to go to their meetings and kind of just like listen to their stories because my sister was part of that group.
Everyone should turn up your volume.
I love with the art of storytelling, and I just love how in storytelling you can express yourself and put all these like facial expressions and all these actions into your story, and also just like interact with the audience and like teach them lessons because every story comes with its own moral. And I guess a memory I have of Joy Swift mentoring me is just her, like, I was always the way she would tell stories, and I was always hooked into every story she told, and she would always be like her stories were always very detailed, and she just made them flow very nicely, and she's also very supportive of me, and every time, like after I told a story, if it was like at a festival or at our meetings, she would always have something nice to say, and she was always just like there for me, and I really appreciated that. So for today's story, I'm going to be telling the Greek myth of Arachne. A long time ago, there lived a woman named Arachne. She was the daughter of a tradesman who often spent his days dyeing cloths into the darkest shades of purple. Arachne had a talent. She was an amazing weaver, and she could weave these tapestries that were so intricate. She was relatively well known amongst the villagers, and she would often receive lots and lots of praise and compliments about her talent. And this led her to an increase in her ego and an increase in her pride. She was often seen bragging to the villagers about her talents and just saying how she was the best weaver amongst all mortals and God. And she would even sometimes say that her gift was not a God-given gift, and she got this herself. Unfortunately, the goddess Athena of wisdom and craft heard these words coming from her, and she was furious and outraged, and she disguised herself into this old lady, and she went through the crowd of villagers gathered around Arachne and her loom, and she went up to Arachne and she started scolding her. Why are you saying these things about yourself and saying these things about the gods and how you're better than them? And Arachne just laughed it off. Oh, who are you to tell me these things? Arachne didn't listen, and Athena then turned back into her true form, and Arachne was taken aback that she had to hide it. Athena said to Arachne, since you're saying these things, I challenge you to a competition. Arachne said, okay, and Athena magically created a loom for herself, and she said, whoever makes the best tapestry wins. And Athena, she pulled wisps of clouds down from the sky and slender pieces of grass from the earth. And she started weaving, and they both were weaving so fast, and they weaved these intricate designs. And after they were done weaving, Athena's tapestry, it showed the gods and all the good things about them and all their achievements. It showed Poseidon riding the waves and Zeus with his lightning bolt and Apollo flying across the sky. On the other hand, Arachne's tapestry showed all the unflattering things about the gods and how they were arguing, and there was a scene of them drinking and fighting and playing with mortals' lives. And although Arachne's tapestry showed all the bad things about the gods, it was very beautiful, and no one could deny it. And Athena was angry because she knew that she had just lost, and in her anger, she screamed and she pointed to Arachne and turned her into a spider. And Arachne, she started shape-shifting, and she grew eight eyes, and 4 legs on each side, and she grew black fur, and she grew a string attached to her body, which reminded her of her human talent of weaving. And to this day, Arachne and her children roam the earth, creating intricate designs with their string, with their yarn, knowing not to mess with another god again. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Trisha, what a lovely telling. What a lovely telling. I'm sorry that the sound was difficult, but I think you got a sense of this young woman and her talent as a storyteller. Just lovely. Well, our next storyteller is Mindy Donner, representing the Storytellers of San Diego. She's a storyteller and puppeteer who has performed on 3 continents. Tonight she presents Perseus and Medusa, her object theater version. Thank you, Mindy. The stage is yours.
King Acrisius of Argos went to the oracle seeking a foretelling of his future. Acrisius, you will be slain by the hand of your own grandson. No! Yes, the oracle has spoken. Acrisius went to his daughter Danae, and he locked her up in a tower. But you know, there were spies everywhere, and the word got to Zeus, who came for a visit, not in the guise of a swan, nor of a bull, but more inventively as a shower of gold. Perhaps you know the story, or you've guessed. In just 9 months, a baby boy was born to Danae. She called him Perseus, and how she loved him. Acrisius locked them up in a wooden trunk and set them upon the waves. At first, they were lulled to sleep in a gentle sea, but then they were tossed and turned and tormented, and at last cast up almost on the shore and pulled in the nets of a kind fisherman, Dictys. And there with his wife, they were protected for many a year until one day, Danae caught the eye of the vile king, Polydictys.
I'll get that boy off the island and I'll have her for myself.
And he contrived a faux marriage ceremony, and everyone came with lavish gifts. Why, there were whole tracts of land with olive trees. There were jewels, treasures. And Perseus came empty-handed. But I have gifts. I have my quick wits, and I'm courageous, and I can perform deeds.
Deeds? Get me the head of the Gorgon Medusa.
That was a chorus of Greek gasps. Well, Perseus went to the oracle in a rather dejected manner. You know, there are many oracles in the Greek world. He felt a presence. Hey, boss, Athena sent me. I'm going to help you out. I'm Hermes, fleet-footed messenger of the gods. Hey, we got to get to the Gorgon on time. What? When? Now, boss, we got to go to the nymphs. And so they did. They went along, and there were cliffhangers, and they were sliding and slipping on glaciers until they came to the sylvan glade of the happy nymphs.
Oh, we've been waiting for you, Perseus. Yes, we have gifts. We have Hades' dogskin cap of invisibility, and we have the magic pouch. And last but not least, the shoes of flight. You'll need those. Be well, favored one.
And they flitted away. Well, there was none other to go to than the Graeae, the 3 Gray sisters who were Grace since birth. And oh, they went on another perilous journey, almost capsizing in quicksand. And they shared between them an eye and a tooth.
Hungry. I want the tooth.
I'm hungry too. I want the eye. I want to see my repast. Now, sisters, stop fighting. When I count to 3, you'll exchange. 1, 2, 3. And he took the eye and the tooth to use as bargaining tools.
I want my tooth.
I want my eye. Now, girls, I will give them back if you tell us where the Gorgon Medusa stands.
Oh, okay. Well, first you have to go past where Atlas stands nearby, and then you see the beach.
Yeah, it looks like the Italian Riviera.
Goodbye. I'm hungry.
Me too. Me too. And there they came to, hey, boss, it looks like the Italian Riviera. And so it does. And they spied the Gorgon way down the beach. That night they prepared, and they were visited by none other than the goddess Athena. Perseus, favored one. Yes, I send you Hermes, and you're going to have to cleave the head of the Medusa. Oh, her backstory. She was once beautiful, but she dared compare her earthly beauty to my celestial glamour. You'll see the results. Well, be well, favored one, and don't look at her. Look only in my reflective shield. Be well, be well. And she left her reflective shield. And in the morning, well, they heard the Medusa was a very early riser. They got ready. And Perseus wore the dogskin cap of invisibility of Hades. And then he got the magic pouch. And he got the sickle sword from Hermes himself. They went down the beach, sneaking. Shh. Shh.
Oh, I'm just arranging my snakes for today's visitors. They're a little untidy. Well, yes, I think I'll be caught nude while reclining. Who is that now?
It was horrible. It was so horrible getting the head, and they stuffed the head into the bag. And then with the shoes of flight, they flew away and back on the island of Seriphus.
Back so soon, you callow youth? You failed, didn't ya?
No, I succeeded. I have the head.
Show me.
All were frozen to stone. The head still had so much power. Goodbye, Hermes. You did good, boss. And there was nothing left to do except Perseus to go find his mother, Danae, who had sought protection at the temple of Athena. He found her there, and here's an arguable plot point. I think she wanted to stay at the convent, and I'm giving her agency. Mother, come back to Argos, and we'll make a life for ourselves. Perseus, I will remain here. Because he had such love and respect for his mother, he bade her a fond and very loving goodbye. He went straight back to Argos, where he established himself as an athlete. He was a powerful discus thrower, and he was invited to a pre-Olympic game in another city. He gave a great throw. It went out of sight. In the stands, a spectator was hit. Who was it? Acrisius, king of Argos. He is dead. Dead. And thus the foretelling of the oracle came true.
Oh, Mindy, that was amazing, amazing. that evil eye guy was awful, but you're very, very clever, very creative. And I'll never think about the Medusa any differently ever again. Thank you so much. That was
Thank-
lovely. That was lovely. Whew, okay, thank you. Well, our next teller is Martha Sjogren. And Martha was a children's librarian for over 30 years in several different libraries. She was also a part of the Bay Area Storytelling Festival the whole time. It's just such a delight to have Martha with us today to tell us a story. Martha, please.
All right. I think I've unmuted myself, have I?
Yes, you sound great.
Okay. So I'm going to tell an Irish story in honor of St. Patrick and also in honor of my Irish ancestors. So there was a man named Mick Purcell, and he had a wife, Molly, and he had more kids than he could ever count. And it seemed like they were always hungry. So he rented a field. It was a rocky field, but he did the best he could. And at the end of the first quarter, he had enough money to pay the rent, get a pig that he could add in too. But then when the second quarter came, the weather was against him. When it should have rained to make the seeds sprout, it was sunny, sunny, sunny. And when he needed the sun to harvest what little grain had grown, the rains finally came and ruined all the crop. So he said to his wife, Molly, I think I'm going to have to sell the cow. Oh, she said, I hope you wouldn't. The children need the milk. What can I do? So the next morning, very early, he and the cow started out, and they went 12 miles up the hill. You had to go up to get to the town where the fair was, where he could sell the cow. And when he got to the top of the hill, he was tired, and the poor cow was tired too. So he sat down on a rock to rest. And all of a sudden, out from behind the rock came the funniest little man he'd ever seen. He was only about 3 feet tall, and he wore an overcoat that buttoned from his chin all the way down to his feet. In fact, you couldn't see the feet. And his head was like a shriveled up cabbage. And his eyes were like two coals in his head. And when he got excited, even a little bit, they rolled around and sparkled. And his hair was like gorse. And on his head, he had a felt cap that was all misshapen. And he said, good morning to you, Mick Purcell. And Mick said, how do you know my name? Oh, I just do, he said. Where are you going? I'm going to the fair to sell my cow. And the little man looked over at the cow and he said, that's not much of a cow. You won't get much for him. But I tell you, if you sell her to me, ooh, the luck you would have. And Mick Purcell was very uneasy around this weird little man. And he said, no, I'm going to fair with her. He said, it's little you get it. And what if you get robbed on the way home? You won't have anything at all then. Oh, Mick Purcell didn't know what to do, but he got up and he started to go down the hill. Then he stopped and he looked at them and said, "What would you give me for her?" Little man reached into his coat and took out a bottle, an empty bottle, a little blue bottle that was completely empty. He said, "Is it daft you think I am, that I would sell a cow for an empty bottle?" "Oh," said the man, there's luck in this bottle." Oh, well, Mick couldn't see it. He said, I'm going to sell the cow. And he started off with the cow down the hill. Little man came right along beside him. And it was like he was floating down, keeping up with Mick. And then he stopped and he stamped his foot on the ground and he said, "This is it. If you don't take this bottle and all the luck that's in it now, it's your last chance. And you'll be sorry." "Oh," said Mick, "well, what will Molly say? You know what she'll do? Oh, she'll yell and she'll scream at me and she'll pound on me and she'll cry." Well," said the little man, "you're right. She will do all of that, but she can't keep it up forever. And when she finally finishes, this is what you tell her to do. Sweep the floor and then put a fresh tablecloth on the table and you put the bottle down on the ground and you say, 'Bottle, do your duty.' Well, then what will happen?" said Mick. "Oh, you'll be surprised. You'll see if you take the bottle." So Mick took the bottle. He was a little bit sorry, but he said, "All right," put it in his pocket, and he started down the hill. He'd only gone a few steps, and he turned around. He was going to wave to the man one more time, and he was disappeared. He and the cow were gone. There wasn't any sign of either of them. Oh, that frightened Mick a little bit, and he began to run, and then he stopped. He'd come a long way already, and he walked the rest of the way home. And he got home a lot sooner than Molly expected. She said, "My, we're back early. Have you sold the cow?" "Oh, yes," she said. "Yes, I did." "Oh, give me some money and I'll go to the baker's and get some bread. The children are starving." "Well, I don't have any money." "You don't have any money? I thought you said you sold the cow." "Oh, I did." And then he reached in his pocket and he took out that blue bottle and he told her all about the little man and what he had said. And she did exactly what he had said. She began to pound on him and yell and scream, "You stupid man, selling a cow for a bottle." And she was crying and crying. And finally, just like the little man predicted, she stopped. And then she said, "Well, what am I supposed to do?" So he said, "First you have to sweep the floor. And then you put a clean tablecloth on the table and we'll see what happens." So she did that. And they all sat down at the table. Mick put the bottle down on the ground and he said, "Bottle, do your duty." And hey, presto, out of that bottle came 2 servants and their arms were piled with gold and silver dishes and goblets filled with milk, 2 filled with ale for Mick and Molly, and oh, gold and silver dishes just piled high with wonderful food to eat, more food than they'd seen at one time in all their lives. When they had finally finished eating, Molly said, "Well, I guess they'll come back and get the plates and the goblets. And they waited. Nothing happened. I said, well, I'll wash the dishes and I'll put them here on the table. They probably come at night while we were asleep. Well, she washed those dishes and put them on the table. In the morning there they were exactly like she had put them. Well, then they were hungry again. So Mick put the bottle down the way he had his bottle. Do your duty. And hey, presto, out of that bottle came those two men with dishes piled high again, and goblets again of gold and silver. And again, the dishes were left behind. And having 3 meals a day, which they didn't usually do, yeah, the dishes were really getting piled up. And they were lining the sides of the house with them. And then Mick said one day, not too long after, I'm thinking if it's not rich we are now, but if I take those dishes to the market and sell them, just think how rich we'll be. So the next day he packed as many as he could into a sack and he went to town. He sold them all. He bought a cart and a horse. So next time he could take even more dishes with them. And very soon they were very rich. And they were buying all kinds of things that they never, ever would have bought before. And Mick remembered who he was and where he had come from. So a lot of that money went to the poor who needed it. They either gave them the money or gave them food. But anyway, Mick was sharing. And one day, the landlord came along. You know, you can't be pure one day and very rich the next without people noticing. And the landlord came and said to Mick, it seems to me that something very special has happened to you. What have you done? How have you gotten so rich all of a sudden? You know, Mick, the way he was, he told him the whole thing. Hello. And showed him the bottle. And the landlord looked around and saw all those dishes. And then he said, Mick, you have a lot there. Would you?
I have one medication, sorry. Thank you.
That's an odd break. I had to take a pill. Well, the landlord said, do you think I could borrow the bottle for a week? Just a week, I'll bring it right back, I promise. And Mick, being the kind of man he was, said, oh yes, just a week. You have to bring it back in a week. Oh, I will. And he showed him how to make it work. Well, for the next week, the landlord had all of the dishes and all of the goblets. And oh, he was having a fine time treating all of his friends. And you think at the end of the week, he wanted to give back that bottle. He went and found a bottle as close to it as he could find. And he brought that bottle to Mick. And he said, oh, Mick, something has happened to the bottle. It just doesn't seem to be working anymore. And Mick said, well, I guess I've gotten as much out of it as I'm supposed to have. So he didn't worry about it because he still had lots of dishes to take, but he soon ran out of all of those dishes and goblets and sold them all. And pretty soon they were back the way they were before, ready to sell a cow again. And Molly said, "Do you think that little man would give us another bottle?" "Well, I could only try and see," said Mick. So the next day he started out. He went all the way up that 12 miles up to the top of the hill, sat down on that rock. And, oh, in no time at all, around came that little man. "Ah," he said, "Mick, didn't I tell you the truth? Weren't you rich?" "Well," said Mick, "yes, but the bottle doesn't seem to be working anymore. I was wondering if you had another." And he said, "Oh, yes, I have one. It's even better than the last one." He took another bottle out, looked just like that little blue bottle that Mick had had before. And he said to me, "You know how it works." "Oh, yes," said Mick. "Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much." And he started running down the hill with it. And as he was running, little man yelled at Mick, "My bottles never lose their power." But Mick didn't pay any attention to that. He just kept running and he ran home. And in no time at all, Molly had swept the floor, put a white tablecloth on the table, put the bottle down and said, "Bottle, do your duty." And this time, up out of the bottle came two great burly men with heavy sticks, and they beat on Molly and Mick and all of the children until they were laying out on the floor. And while they were laying there, Mick remembered what the little man had said. My bottles never lose their power. And he sort of put together that maybe the landlord was fooling with him. So the next day he went over to the landlord's house and he could hear all of this music and all of this noise coming out. But he knocked on the door and the servant came and said, the master is very, very busy. You can't see him. "Oh," said Mick, "you tell him it's about a bottle. I have a bottle." And in he went. And this time the landlord came out and said, "You have another bottle?" "Oh, yes," said Mick. "And this one is even better than the first one." And he looked around while he was talking to the landlord and saw where his bottle was. And he said, "Oh, yes, let's try it." And they put it down on the floor. And he said, "Bottle, do your duty." And up out of the bottle came those big burly men with their sticks. And they began beating and all of those people who were there dancing and singing and eating it out of wonderful gold plates. And pretty soon the landlord said, Mick, stop. I'll give you back your bottle. Stop before you kill us. And so he took the bottle away and the two men went back in the bottle. But then he took his own bottle home. And very soon after that, things were the way they had been. Very, very rich all over again. And, yes, he took that bottle. In fact, he had two bottles. And with the one bottle, he got so rich, they had all kinds of servants. And one day, one of the servants dropped the bottle and it broke. Well, they never had a bottle like that again. Mick had learned a lot of things. And to this very day, that hill where Mick got his bottles is known as a Bottle Hill. That's the end.
Oh, Martha, thank you so much. I couldn't figure out how Mick was going to get the right bottle back, but of course it worked. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. It's so good to see you. Well, excuse me. Our next storyteller is Dave Tarvin. Oh, I should tell you, by the way, sorry. Martha was representing the Mixed Bag Storytellers group. Thank you, Martha. So David is representing the Sacramento Storytellers Guild. He's a retired public servant who enjoys storytelling in various genres. He specializes actually in historical tales, but we've got him tonight for a different focus. In the before time, he used to tell stories. He worked at various institutions telling stories to seniors and facilitating creative writing, storytelling groups. The title of his story is Soulmates, his own rendition taken from a story in Plato's Symposium. David, please tell us a story.
Well, hello, everybody. So this is one of my favorite stories. It's a true, well, part of it's true. Years ago, I was at church, and the service was over, and I was standing in the back, you know, the way people do, and I was talking to people, but I just happened to be talking to one of my favorite people. His name was Will, 94 years young. And he's a retired psychologist, and we used to talk about all that psychology, heady stuff, and we used to have these great conversations. We were engaged in such a conversation when all of a sudden his wife walked through the church, and she walked out the back door. And as she was walking by, she said, "Oh, hey, love you, I'll see you later." She was off with some of her girlfriends, and she got to the front doors. There's those big glass double doors. And she opened the door, she went through the door, and she turned. Now I just happened to be looking right in that direction. And Will, he was looking straight at me. And she turned around, and then all of a sudden she stopped. She kind of straightened up a little bit, and she looked right at Will. And somehow Will just knew that. Somehow he intuited it. He kind of straightened up and he turned, and they made eye contact. She let go of that door and waved. Her face lit up and just glowed. She was absolutely beautiful. And Will, he just stood there and waved too. And at that moment, I had this weird thought just popped into my head. Plato's Symposium. And I started to think about that in that split second, and I thought about Aristophanes. Now you see, Aristophanes was the Greek father of comedic drama. And he was at the symposium with Plato and many, many, many other great Greek philosophers and leaders of art and politics and everything. And in that supposed symposium, they were discussing love. And Plato asked Aristophanes to tell a story about love, soulmates. And so Aristophanes stood up. Now, Aristophanes was a big man. He was about 6'2", 225 pounds. He rose up. He had long blonde hair and a long beard, dressed in that white robe. And he began to speak. And he said, long, long, long ago, human beings, they didn't look the way that they look now. They didn't look like us. They look kind of like us. Human beings were big and round. Human beings had 2 heads. They had 4 legs, 4 arms, and there were 3 types of human beings. There were females, and the females had 2 heads, had 2 sets of privates and 2 sets of breasts. And then there were male humans who had 2 sets of male privates and 2 heads and 4 arms, 4 legs. And then there were the androgynous humans. They had the privates of a female and on one side, and on the other, a male. Now the humans were powerful, aggressive. They became dominant on the world because you see, they had great physical power, but they also had this amazing mobility because you see, they could move in any kind of direction whenever they wanted to, fast, fast, fast. But if they were agitated or aggressive, they could move like lightning. They would throw out all their limbs, those 4 arms and those 4 legs, and they would start to spin, and they would just go cartwheeling across the landscape. And pretty soon they were the dominant force on the world, and they began to think that they too could be gods. And they looked up to Mount Olympus. Well, they mounted an assault on Mount Olympus. The gods were able to repel them, but they were angry. And there was a huge council meeting, and all of the gods clamored and screamed and yelled. They wanted to destroy the humans. They were too big of a threat. But Zeus, in his wisdom, said, we can't do that. If we destroy the humans, who will worship us? Where will we get tribute? He said, there has to be another way. And so they talked and they talked and they argued and they screamed and they yelled. And Zeus had an idea. He said, I will strike each and every one of them with a lightning bolt, and I will split them in half. And that way there will be twice as many humans, and we will get twice as much tribute, and we have more people to worship us. That's the plan. And everybody agreed. And so Zeus came down from Olympus and he struck each and every human, and they split apart. But then they began to wander, and they began to wail and to scream, and they would run at each other and crash and clasp each other and kind of wrestle around, each one seeking its other half. And this went on and on until the human beings began to get sick. They didn't have any food. They couldn't eat. All they did was wander, wander, wander. And so Apollo, he took pity on them, and he came down and he started to bring people together. And soon people were able to wander around and each match up with their other half. Some female to female, some male to male, and some male to female. And those were the happiest, most productive people. When they were able to find their other half, they once again became the most powerful creatures, most dominant creatures on the planet. Well, after that little story ran itself through my head, I looked over at Will, and he turned back and looked at me and he smiled. And I knew that he and his wife, they'd been married for like 70 years. And I was looking at him and I just said, symposium. He said, Aristophanes. And I said, I think so. Soulmates. He looked at me and he smiled this huge grin and he said, I am a lucky man.
Oh, Dave, what a wonderful story. And how lovely for your friend and you. Love is all around.
It's very true.
Thank you for putting that together for us. That was lovely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ah, interesting. We have such an interesting array of stories on this topic. This is delightful. What a special evening. Our next storyteller is Carolyn Middleton. She's part of the Community Storytellers of Los Angeles, which is led by Karen Golden. Now, she says she was born in the cold Jamaica and raised in Long Island, New York. She's a writing coach and a storyteller living in Los Angeles, and she's known as Ms. Fruity. Now, she says her stories may give us courage or cause us to question. They may make us laugh or cry, but most of all, they remind us that we are not alone on this wonderful journey called life. Tonight, she will be telling Anansi and Nothing Go Hunting for Wives. Carolyn, please tell us a story.
Thank you. Good evening. One day, Anansi decided that he needed to take a wife. Now, for most men, this would be a simple task, but Anansi's bad name had gotten all through the country and nobody would have anything to do with him. He knew he would have no luck finding a wife in a nearby village. He thought if only he were a man of significance like his neighbor who lived on the next hill. Nothing was very important. You could tell by the way he walked, by the way he talked, by the way he dressed. He was a man of distinction. Oh, how easy it would be for me, thought Anansi, if I looked like nothing. Life would be so much easier. The next morning, Anansi went over the hill to Nothing's house, and he said to him, you know, I was thinking, you're living here in this large, clean house with nothing but servants to take care of you. You should have a wife. Nothing thought to himself, said, I've been thinking the same thing. Well, said Anansi, I'm planning to go into the city to find a wife. You should go with me and then we can both get wives. That's a good idea, said Nothing. I think I will go. And so the next morning they met at the crossroads to head to the city. Now, Anansi was dressed as a bridegroom, but he was raggedy. He just didn't have good clothes. Whereas Nothing was dressed to impress. You could tell that he was going to have no trouble finding a wife. If I looked like Nothing, said Anansi, I would make such an impression on everyone in the city. And they headed off into the city. After they had walked for a while, Anansi said, you know, I was just thinking, I sure would like to know what I look like in your shirt. Oh, let's switch. And they did. Ooh, Anansi was very proud of himself, looking like Nothing. And they continued on their way. They walked a little further, and then Anansi said, just to get the full impact of what it feels to look like you, let's switch the whole outfit. Okay, said Nothing, because he was an agreeable man. He was a good man. And so they did. And Anansi looked at himself and was so proud of himself, standing there looking like Nothing. And they continued on into the village. When they got close to the city, Anansi said quickly and suddenly, oh, I just remembered I have a message to give my uncle. I will catch up to you later. And he disappeared down an alley in the city. Will said nothing to himself. That was awfully sudden. He must have urgent business. And he didn't even give me the clothes. But, and he continued on. Now, Anansi made a big impression on everybody in the town. Everybody was so excited to talk to him because he looked good. And it took no time for him to secure not only the most beautiful wife, but a donkey. But not so for nothing, because he looked like a beggar. And there's no man that wanted his daughter to hook up with him. It wasn't going to happen, except one woman, wise in her ways, said, "You're poor too, but we're worse off than you are. Take my daughter." Nothing looked at her. She wasn't beautiful, but she was a good woman, and he was a good man. And so they set off together back to the village. They had gone on the road a little ways when who do you think they ran into? "Ah, my friend Nothing," said Anansi. "Where have you been? I have been looking all over for you. What have you been doing?" "It doesn't look like you had very good luck." Nothing looked at Anansi, his beautiful wife on the donkey, and said nothing about the clothes, and proceeded to continue on his way home. When they got to the crossroads, both wives were surprised, gasped and pearl clutching like you wouldn't believe, because the road to Anansi's house was filthy, all strewn with brushes, a mess. But the road to Nothing's house was clean and paved, and his servants were standing there with fresh water and clean clothes for him. The women couldn't believe it. Anansi and Nothing separated and went to their own homes. Well, Anansi's wife stood it as long as she could and said, "That's it. I can't take it anymore." And she ran away and ran over to the hill to Nothing's house, where Nothing and his wife took her in because she cried about how she'd been tricked and was ashamed and she had nowhere else to go. Well, don't you know, when Anansi found this out, he was outdone. "I will kill him." And he swore vengeance. And he set out to make a trap that would ensnare Nothing. And he dug a pit deep, like you would catch an animal, with stakes that stuck up and grass that covered over it to hide it in the bush. And then he oiled the path near the end. And he stood behind the bushes and cried out, "Help me, help me, I've been hurt. Oh, Nothing, help me, please help me." Now, the two women tried to tell Nothing not to go out there, but you know how some men are. And so Nothing, who was a good man, heard his neighbor in trouble, went out into the dark night with a small lantern. As he walked down the path, he got closer and closer to the pit, and he slipped and fell in and died. Anansi disappeared out of the village. Oh, the entire village grieved. Nothing's friends, his wife, his servants, all grieved because Nothing was a good man. And his wife took lots and lots of yams and cooked them up. And she made sweet foods and she passed them out to the children and asked them to help her mourn her dead husband. And so that is why so many children, when you ask them why they are crying, say, for nothing.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. But what a sad story. And Anansi, my goodness.
It's a trickster. It's a trickster. You know, it's amazing. I was curious about this. Oh, I don't want to talk anybody's time. I was just curious about this because death isn't the same way that you used to tell stories before. Like now, it's a whole thing. It's, you know.
Yeah.
So I was hesitant at first about the story, but yes, no remorse. Everybody, it's, you know, because that's one of the things, especially in West African happens, people die. You know, that's really the thing. But
well, we die. Everybody dies everywhere. So
yeah.
Thank you so much. Great story. Great story. Thank you. Ah, well, our next storyteller is Renu Narayan. Now, one of the benefits, if we can say, of the pandemic is that we've been able to meet and greet and share with people from around the world. And Renu comes to us from India, and she says her stories speak for themselves. So Renu, please tell us a story.
Am I loud and clear? Yes. Thank you so much, Sarah, and thank you for inviting me, giving me a space to tell this story. I'm bringing to you today a story from the Shiva Puranas, which is part of Hindu mythology. And just to give you a small background about Hindu mythology, our scriptures are all written in Sanskrit, and much of it is philosophy and very difficult for the common people to understand. So what happened was the great sages created lots and lots of stories, interesting stories, with great values behind each and every story. And these stories were told to children and to adults so that we could understand what life is all about. So one of the stories that I have chosen for today is from the Shiva Purana. Now, to give you a brief background, there are three main deities in Hindu religion. That is Brahma, who is the creator, Vishnu, who is the protector or the preserver of the creation, and Shiva, who is the destroyer. Because all that is created has to be destroyed so that something new can be created in its place. So one day what happened was, Vishnu was in his place, that is Vaikuntha, and he was reclining on his serpent, Adishesha. He was resting after a hard day's work. And on that particular day, Brahma, the creator, decided to visit his friend Vishnu. And when he arrived at Vaikuntha, he said, "Hello, Vishnu." And Vishnu looked at Brahma, still reclining on his Adishesha. And he said, "What a surprise, Brahma. Sit down." Now, Brahma was a little angry. He had come to visit his friend, and his friend hadn't even stood up. So his ego was stirred. And seeing Vishnu seeing his face, asked, "What's the matter, Brahma? What is bothering you?" And Brahma couldn't control himself anymore. He said, "Vishnu, I have come all the way from Amarapalli to visit you, and you don't have the courtesy to get up and receive me, not only as a friend, but as a guest? Vishnu said, but Brahma, you're a close friend and I've had a long day, you know. Please come, sit down. But Brahma was not appeased at all. He was still angry and he said, Vishnu, I am the creator. I am the one who created you. Don't you have some amount of respect for me? Now, in the beginning, Vishnu was calm, did not want to have a fight. And so he said, Brahma, cool down. Have you forgotten that you were born out of a lotus that fell out of my navel? How can you claim to be the creator? And how can you claim to be greater than me? Brahma was absolutely enraged when he heard this. He said, how dare you? How dare you say that? I am greater than you. And can you imagine the gods, the three supreme deities, two of them started to fight. And of course, all the devas were below the three deities. They all decided to take sides. So some of them came to Vishnu's side and some of them came to Brahma's side. And the war started. All kinds of weapons, celestial weapons were being used. Now, when the gods are warring, what do you think happens on the earth? There were all kinds of natural disasters. There were earthquakes, there were tsunamis, and people were suffering. Now, sage Narada, he was the son of Brahma, but he was an ardent devotee of Vishnu. He was normally a mischief maker. He was famous for creating trouble among all devas. But now he was anxious. He just wanted to resolve this problem, but he was not the one to do it. So he ran to the only one who could do something. And that was the third god, Maheshwara or Shiva. He ran to Shiva, to Mount Kailasha, and said, Shiva, you need to do something. You've got to stop my father and Vishnu from fighting. And Maheshwara simply smiled and said, yes, Narada, I'm aware of what's happening. Don't you worry. Go back home. And so Narada went back. Now, as the war was being waged, suddenly a huge fire appeared in between the two warring parties. And whenever they flung a weapon or an arrow, it just disappeared into the flame. Both Vishnu and Brahma were surprised. How did this come up all of a sudden? And then they decided to meet and talk to each other. And by now, Vishnu was tired of the war and he said, I think we need to resolve this without fighting. Let's do one thing. This fire has appeared out of nowhere. Let one of us find out where it originates, and let the other one find out where it ends. Brahma was happy to hear this and he said, I'll go up and find out the end. And Vishnu said, okay, I'll go down and find out where it originates. And so Vishnu took on the form of a boar and he went down and down and down. And Brahma took the form of a swan and he started flying up and up and up. Now, Vishnu went down, 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 down. He went past the earth, he went down and down, but there just didn't seem to be any origin for this fire. And he soon got fed up. It had been years he had been going down and down and down. And he said, I've had enough. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm just going to go back up and tell Brahma that he is the winner. And so he started going up. Now, in the meantime, Brahma was flying up and up and up. And as he flew, the flame kept keeping pace with him. And he was getting tired too. There seemed no way out, but he was determined to prove that he was more powerful than Vishnu. And just as he was flying up, he saw something coming down, falling down. And he said, stop. It was the flower Ketaki. He said, where are you going and where are you from? And she said, well, I was sitting on Shiva's head, but he shook his head. And now I am just free falling. I have no idea where I'm going. So Brahma said, stop. I will help you at some point in your life, but you must do something for me. And Ketaki said, yes, what do you want of me? I want you to come as my witness. I need you to tell others that I have found where the flame ends and you should corroborate my evidence as my evidence. Ketaki hesitated a bit, but isn't that telling a lie? She said. It's just a very small lie, Please do this for me, said Brahma. And Ketaki agreed. And so they started going down. In the meantime, Vishnu had already come back. And he greeted Brahma and said, Brahma. But before he could say anything, Brahma said, Vishnu, I am the winner. I have found the end of the flame. And here's Ketaki to tell you all that I'm right. And Ketaki said, yes, yes, indeed, he is right. He did find the end of the flame. Now all the gods and everybody started clapping, and Vishnu said, Brahma, I'm glad that you found the end of the flame. In any case, I was planning to declare you the winner. I'm very happy that you are more powerful than me. But just as they were about to disperse, the flame all of a sudden just disappeared, and in its place stood Maheshwara. And he looked at Brahma and he said, Brahma, you are the creator. You are supposed to be the role model, and you lied. Don't you know that there is no one who's more powerful than anyone else? How could you tell a lie? And Brahma hung his 5 heads. He has 5 heads in shape. And Shiva said, well, you have committed a crime and you need to pay for it. And out of Shiva's forehead sprung out a warrior called Veerabhadra. And Veerabhadra, with one swipe of his sword, cut off the head that had lied. And now Shiva turned to Ketaki and said, Ketaki, you have lived with me for so many years, and you actually told a lie. I'm afraid you need to be punished too. No one will ever worship me with you, he said. But Ketaki said, no, please, please, Maheshwara, don't punish me like this. I cannot live without you. And so Shiva relented and he said, well, you will be used to decorate the surroundings, but never to decorate my body. And then Narada came forward and said, Maheshwara, why did you assume the form of fire? And Shiva said, well, fire represents the endless circle of life. There is no end, there is no beginning. And fire also means extinguishing your ego. The ego is the one who holds us back. The ego doesn't allow us to go beyond ourselves. And now I am going to assume the form of the linga, the Agni linga. And in fact, this Agni linga is still worshipped in Tiruvannamalai, which is a famous temple in Tamil Nadu, very close to Chennai. And the festival of Shivaratri and Kartikai Deepam is still celebrated as a manifestation that Shiva took at that period when Lord Vishnu and Lord Brahma waged this war for supremacy. And the idea is that when you go to visit this temple, you give up your ego, you believe in a life of truth, and you believe in a life of righteousness. So that was the story of the war waged between the 2 gods. And of course, in Hinduism, all the gods and goddesses are metaphors. They're basically there to represent qualities that are present in humans. And the fact that we need to let go of our ego in order to really live a life which is rich and fulfilling. Thank you so much for listening.
Oh, Renew, thank you so very much. Thank you, thank you. It's so wonderful to get just a little bit of insight into the gods that you know so well, the stories you know so well. And lying is not a good thing, ever. So, thank you, thank you. And Renew is, as I said, from India, representing the Contra Costa tail spinners tonight. So thank you so much. Our next storyteller is Alicia Retes. She's an enthralling storyteller and visual arts performance of original and interactive Indigenous stories for all ages. Alicia has shared her work at various Indigenous gatherings statewide. Alicia is especially fond of retelling Indigenous stories from her travels to honor the original inhabitants and their land. And she has been many places and worked with many, many Indigenous groups. She also incorporates music, including songs of her own composition in English, Spanish, and various Indigenous languages, along with ethnic instruments. And Alicia is going to begin with a special land acknowledgement and then go into her story. Alicia, please, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Y'all hear me all right? Sound good? Thank you. I'm coming to you in the unceded lands of the Coast Miwok people, which is the entire boundaries of Marin County. And the Coast Miwok people were here for tens, if not 13,000 years. They managed the lands. They knew every inch of their lands, and they cultivated not only for their food, but for their cultural needs. I've been given permission by the Coast Miwok Council of Marin to tell stories. I've been telling their stories for about 10 years through the Museum of the American Indian, at big time festivals for the national parks and so forth. I'm going to be, first what I'd like to say is to greet you in their language, simply to honor them. So a typical greeting would be open tawish. And literally that means, are you being good? To answer, one could say katowish, which means I'm good. I've composed songs in Coast Miwok, English and Spanish. Tonight, in the interest of time, I'll sing one that I composed in just the English and Coast Miwok portion of it. I have a musical instrument that I'll be playing, and it comes from the branches of the elderberry tree. Of course, you can't get a nice straight branch like this unless you prune the trees. Just one of many examples how they were cultivating the lands, not simple hunter-gatherers, but actively shaping the landscape. The song I sing, we typically do it in a call and response. If you catch the tune, I'll be repeating the lines twice. If you catch it, you're welcome to join me. And we finish a song and stories by saying, oh, and you say, oh, you're welcome to. And I think that'll do it. Thank you. Come coyote, let's sing, let's sing, let's sing for our families. Let's sing, let's sing, let's sing for our families. Wheela oye, huna koya, huna koya, huna koya, hini ini iko, huna koya, hini ini iko. Come coyote, let's sing, let's sing, let's sing for our families. Let's sing, let's sing, let's sing for our families. Wheela oye, kuna koya, huna koya, huna koya, hini ini iko, huna koya, hini ini iko. Wheela oye, huna koya, huna koya, huna koya, hini ini iko. Oh! In the before time, long time ago, when the plants and the animals were part human and part animal with mystical abilities. In the before time, when everyone listened to the messages carried on the winds, this is when our story begins. Oye Oyish, grandfather coyote, he was going along the woods and came to the streams, and well, he was quite thirsty. So he stopped to drink. And after quenching his thirst, he noticed one of the songs coming from the river. It was a nice song. It sounded like, and Oye really liked it. He says, well, I gotta have that song. That's a good song. I'm gonna take that song. So he took a very long tule reed, hollowed inside air pockets, and he pointed it to where the sound was coming from, and he swallowed that music. Now, Shamko, gray squirrel, he was out and about, and as he was harvesting his food, he noticed that the song was missing from the river. Oh, but he had so many things to do. He went about his needs, and he did see Coyote, but didn't see anything about what he was doing. And so Coyote went along a little further, and he came to a place where the water was going just a little bit faster. And it sounded like, oh, yeah, I gotta have that one too. That's a good song. Happy taking it. So he took out his truly reading. He swallowed that song. Well, it just so happened that Choyeki the deer was in the area. And, you know, she's a nice big cupped ears. She hears us long before anyone knows she's around, but she was minding her own kids there. But she too, right away, noticed the song was missing from her area of the stream. But she needed to tend to her little ones, and she went about to do that. Well, Coyote went trotting along a little further. This time he came to a place where the stream was more of a river. It was really picking up, and the water was going pretty fast, and it was slapping up against the rocks, and it sounded like, well, like clapping. It was, oh, yeah. Boy, I gotta have that one too. He got out his tool reading. Yeah. Oh. He took the entire melody. Well, Cooley the bear was out and about. He was after some kashi, some salmon. He was scooping it up, and he too noticed right away that this music from his area where he was fishing it had disappeared. But he hadn't noticed Coyote doing anything, so he just sort of stood there on his legs and pondered that. Well, and along that time, Cockaleesh the crow came out to send out the alarm. Ah! Ah! Coyote's stealing music from the water. Ah! Ah! We gotta stop him. So all the animals, they realized what was happening. They all got together and they were coming after Coyote. But you know, he's clever. He had a Thule reed mat, and he whipped that out. He popped on that mat and he said, "Take me away." And right away, he took off and he went far to the east where the sun gets up. Well, of course, all the animals, the four-leggeds and the two-leggeds and the paws and they were all, and there were birds coming and they're kind of catching up. But he made it all the way to the one and only elderberry tree that stood all alone on this hill where the sun gets up. And when he got there, he took out his Thule reed and he blew out all of the melodies. And those melodies went right in to the branches of the elderberry tree. Oh, of course, he saw all the animals were catching up with him, so he hightailed it out there. He lit his mat on fire and it shot off like a jet, went all the way back to the west coast. And thereupon he turned himself into a piece of driftwood, and he blended in with the driftwoods, and there he remained. None of the animals could find him until quite some time ago. His grandson Wekwek found him, and eventually, oh, well, that's a story for another day. But to this day, the elderberry, of course, you know, the elderberry loves water, and she took the melodies and gave the originals to her and came up with her own melodies. And that's the melodies that we hear, the music that comes from the elderberry tree, the branches of the elderberry. And even today, Miwoks are still here and they're making music with their elderberry sticks. Wheela oye, huna koya, hini iko, huna koya, hini iko. Oh!
Oh, Alicia. Alicia, that was lovely, amazing, just fabulous.
Oh, thank you.
That Coyote, he gets away with a lot.
He does indeed. And this is actually a piece of my show for this Saturday at the Alameda Storytelling Drumming Festival. And I know we'll make announcements later, but just a little tease for the program.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, indeed, I'd like to invite all the tellers back, and we're going to learn about what's coming up for folks. And thank you to all of them who shared their stories tonight. So here they come, here they come. I also want to do a huge thanks to Andy Lawfer, who's our tech guy. Yay, Andy. And Ed Lewis, who's the producer of the genre series. And we're going to have Ed talk a little bit later about next month and what's coming up. Meanwhile, let's see what's happening with folks. So let's see, I guess we can go in order of performance. So Mindy, tell us what's coming up for you.
Hi, I'm putting it up in the chat. Well,
Great.
a couple of things are coming up, and something's coming up Saturday. If y'all want to come down to San Diego, Marilyn McPhee is the festival director, and we're having our first in-person 12th annual storytelling festival at the Coronado Public Library from 10 in the morning through 6 at night. And we're glad to be in person, and they've been really gracious. And then number 2, I just put up in the chat, Youth Standing Strong Camp, which is under the beautiful umbrella of Assist. And there will be 3 camps this summer. Not all 3 are yet on the website, but I put the website up. And there's a June camp, a July camp, and we're planning an August camp. That's for youth ages kindergarten through last year in high school. And thank you all. I had such a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mindy. Looking forward to those events. Martha, do you have something you'd like to share with us?
I don't have any storytelling things coming up. But, you know, I have a wedding coming. One of our grandsons is finally getting married. And his poor mom and dad have been working because they're getting married in their mom and dad's garden. So they've been going crazy trying to get it all ready for a wedding.
It will be lovely. And Martha says that she was a librarian for so many years, and none of her children have taken up that mantle, although many of them are teachers like their dad. So that's wonderful. Okay, David, what's coming up for you?
Well, on the 4th Saturday of this month, the Sacramento Storytelling Guild is actually holding their monthly event. So I'll be telling there. And they're actually doing a hybrid meeting. So they're meeting in person, but they're also going to do it on Zoom. And I will be telling a story that's a fictional story about my grandmother. But the inspiration came from an old Eastern European fairy tale. So the title of the story is The Golden Thimble.
Oh, lovely, lovely.
Great.
Thank you.
Cool.
Carolyn, what's coming up for you?
Oh, just the AP exam for the poor children that study to take the advanced placement language exam. I coach students who do that. But mostly as far as the storytelling, I'm trying to get up enough nerve to participate in a story slam at the Moth. So
Go for it. You go
we'll
for it.
well.
see, yeah. There's a theme coming up in April, so I'm trying to work with that, and we'll see.
Excellent. Good for you. Good for
Bravo.
you. Miss Renew, what's up with you?
Well, things are opening up here in Chennai. So we will be celebrating World Storytelling Day at a bookstore called Odyssey. Not very close to my house, but I have organized other tellers also to come and participate to tell stories. And I also organize under my banner Katha Potpuri, my storytelling ventures called Katha Vriksh, which means story tree in Sanskrit. And I have a bi-monthly festival which I host, and it's called Katha Potpuri, which is happening end of this month. And there are actually 2 people from here who are also telling stories. Vicky is telling a story and Madeline is also telling a story. So if any of you want to or interested in listening to the stories, it's free for you and you can attend it. I can share, Vicky will have the link or Madeline will have the link and you can all join. It's a 3-day thing affair. It's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the 25th, 24th, 25th, I think 25th, 26th and 27th of this month. And it's 8 to 9 p.m. IST, which means it's about 7:30 in the morning for you. It's 7:30 a.m. like how it was for me this morning. When it's 7 p.m. for you, it's 7:30 in the morning for me. So it's the same. It's reverse applies. So if any of you are interested in also telling in the future festivals, because this happens every 2 months, you could please let me know and I will of course invite you. And yeah, so this is what is happening. And I am planning more events offline, hopefully, if things continue the way they are right now. So it's good. So thank you very much. I've enjoyed telling a story here. I'm really grateful that Zoom has happened and I've met so many wonderful people, wonderful storytellers. It's been a huge learning. And it's nice to talk about stories from my country because very often people don't really know what Hinduism is all about. It's really not a religion. It's a way of life. It's following the path of dharma or righteousness, which is what I explain to people. It's really not a religion. It's just a way of understanding human beings. What we all go through, we are all part of the universal consciousness. There is no such thing as, class or creed or race or anything like that. That is what we believe. So
Lovely.
that's what I'm trying to share.
Thank you. And would you put your contact information into the chat so that people can get a hold of you? Thank you so much. And Alicia, tell us more.
Okay, so this Saturday is the Storytelling and Drumming Festival being put on by the Alameda Park and Recreation. It's from 1 to 4:30 at the Mastic Senior Center. I'll put that information in the chat in just a little bit. Wanted to give a shout out to Linda Yamoto. She and I are the only two storytellers, but they also have some poetry presenters. There's drumming, taiko drumming, and puppetry. It's a free event. And so I encourage you to come and support them. This is the first time they're putting on a storytelling and drumming festival. And I was really happy to be a part of that. And then my real exciting news is that I've been invited to participate at the Southern Sierra Storytelling Festival. Yeah, in July. And just a quick little share, I went up there to check out the venue, and it happened to be when some 30-something women and a couple of men put on a show. It was burlesque with poetry.
Oh.
It was
Wow.
hilarious. And I must admit, I've never seen so much flesh all at one time, but they're just brilliant, very, very warm audience, and that was delightful. I do want to make one note. I'm not a Coast Miwok person, just so that everyone understands that. I'm a mixed European, American, Mexican, and my North American indigenous roots are with the Yoremi, commonly known as Mayo, and the Yoemi, commonly known as Yaqui. And this Saturday, I'll be telling a Yaqui story.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank
and
you.
I want to make sure everybody knows that the Bay Area Storytelling Festival is back. I'll put in the chat. You can get tickets. There's a range of tickets. It's going to be in person and virtual. And if you buy an in-person ticket, you can be there in person, and you also have access to the videos later as well. It's at the Orinda Community Center where we were several years ago, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So I hope you all can come. I'll put that in the chat. And Ed Lewis, come and talk to us about genre and whatever else you'd like to share.